Morning.
I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. I'll note all board members are present with the exception of Ms. Hudson and Mr. Williams, who are excused, or may just be a little delayed with the weather, at least for Helen. So we will start with our minutes from the November 21st, 2019 minutes. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So, second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Next up, we have a report from our secretary, Joe. Morning.
Yes, good morning. I'd like to first welcome Jonathan Coop, a new paralegal who's going to be assisting us going forward.
Welcome, Jonathan.
Good morning.
And in terms of the report, we have new correspondence from Mr. Giardine, which is in your packet.
Okay.
And in addition, the proposed 2020 schedule is in your packet. And if there's no objection, that will be the schedule that we shall adopt, though it's always subject to change.
Right. Any concerns with the schedule?
Nope.
Okay, good.
Thank you. That completes my report.
Great. Thanks, Joe. Okay. All right, next up, report from our program manager, Chris. Morning.
So report there is in front of you. So two things today. I wanted to run through this quickly, and then we brought some a slideshow here with just some progress shots of what we've accomplished on the project so far. I thought that would be good to just check in and see some pictures. So under the procurement section in the upper left-hand corner there, Henniger is currently out for bid. Bids will be due on the 9th. I think we've got some decent interest in that, so we're moving forward with that. Beyond that, we're prepping to, in the first quarter here, all of the subsequent projects there, Clary, Elms, the Fowler Interior, the Danforth, and the Blodgett site are all traveling down a path to, we're going to stagger that procurement in terms of when we go out to bid, but the objective is in the first quarter to put all those out and receive bids on those so that we're lined up for the work that follows. Underneath project financing and approvals, again, same status in terms of Office of State Comptroller in for review there for the financing. Under the SIDA did approve the T2B financing at their meeting, so that was a good thing to accomplish. The Fraser final cost report, that's our first of many that will go into the state, but that's been finalized and sent to the state, which will subsequently get your building aid moving after that. And then we're submitting a series of what we call the early aid start request forms, which is part of our financial plan. It's the steps that go forward so that we can get the building aid flowing ahead of the completion of where we are. So those are in progress as well. Underneath design status, I just wanted to mention that we are doing an additional small site work package to replace the parking lots or reconstruct the parking lots at Blodgett because we had some funding that was remaining there, and that was how we chose to apply that. Underneath, under the construction update, under Blodgett, we're continuing over there. The door replacement, the exterior door replacement, by and large has been completed, and now it's a matter of reinstalling, if you've been inside, putting the marble back on that surrounds the trim around the interior of the doors. Beyond that, we're working on the interior ramp. There's an ADA ramp that will be installed at the back of the building. Well, I call the back of the building to provide access by the gym into there. So that's underway as well. Grant, Huntington, and Ed Smith are more or less kind of in the same Grant and Huntington are in the same status that we're working through the work that wasn't completed. We're continuing to perform work on there, as well as punch list work and reinspection work and financial closeout, and starting to move towards that. Ed Smith and Bellevue obviously are both reoccupied. Same position there. We're trying to achieve financial closeout in those and complete punch list items that have been identified. And then Fowler site, things are moving along well there. We completed the driving of the wood piles over there to the tune of 1,400 of them. By and large, had very little in terms of obstructions, which was a concern that we had, that we'd hit things, and had a few, but by and large good. We've now moved on to we've completed the second of 8 pours that will be over there. So we're pouring concrete in pretty large pours. We poured Monday 500 yards over there, so it's a pretty significant amount of concrete that we're putting in over there. But we're pleased with where we are on that, and if Mother Nature will continue to give us a little bit of a break here for another month or so, that would be great. So then we can get it to a point that we have the concrete in. So going well. Happy to report on that. And then Corcoran and Nottingham, as you know, those are phased projects, and they're moving forward as well. We spoke about Ed Smith. They're underneath my constraints or critical issues just because we're driving to get those completed to be done. So those are on our list. Utility coordination, we have 2 buildings that are of concern at the moment between Corcoran and Nottingham. We want to get the easements in place, and get the easements are critical to the component to being able to move that forward in terms of the work that we have to do over there with the new electric service that comes in. So working towards that. And then the Grant Huntington and Blodgett, you know, we had work that has carried over that didn't get completed in the fall as anticipated, and so just keeping eyes on that and pushing to get that stuff, you know, rounded out and completed. Underneath the procurement planning, we've worked through that in terms of a plan for Clary Elms and Danforth in terms of how we're doing that. We have that we have a concept there for that. I think we have to have a meeting, Jaime, with yourself to run through a couple of those things just to get some details on that. And then on Fowler Field, we've developed a plan there for the bleachers, press box, and CSB that we're working closer towards a procurement means and method to accomplish that.
Great.
So that, in a nutshell, is where we are. Any questions? I know I moved quickly through that.
Here's- The next 2 weeks, we'll have no kids, no staff in the buildings, so what is the plan to get some work done in those buildings, especially Huntington and Grant?
Yes, we do have there is a plan. It was put out, I think Nate, you published it yesterday, for every building. So Tom and his staff are aware of where we are and what we're doing, and so we're working in all the buildings. And it is a great opportunity for us to grind out some punch list items and grind out some disruptive work activities. So, and we have that if anybody, that's all mapped out on a calendar if somebody was to want that, or you may already have a copy of it. So,
Okay. Chris, is there work going on at Corcoran in off hours, late at night, early in the morning? Tom's
Yes.
nodding his head. Yes. Okay.
yeah, we've been doing the destructive work. The cutting of the openings for the new windows is work that we've been working on at night.
Okay. Yeah, we've heard a couple neighborhood complaints. Nothing overwhelming, but just wanted
Yeah,
to
it's just
confirm
that to be saw cutting on the building face during the day, pretty disruptive.
Sure.
And then also there's a lifting component to that where they're cutting pieces and then pulling them out. And again, just something that's overhead work that we just didn't want to accomplish then.
So what are the hours that's taking
We're
place?
3:30 to 11. Yeah.
So stopping at 11 p.m.?
It's probably closer to 11:30, but.
Okay. Okay, but not, okay, that's
Yeah,
helpful.
it's
Yeah.
not beyond that. And obviously with the next 2 weeks with no students in, that will move to days.
Right.
And when we come back out of the holiday break, we should be very close to normal.
Okay, thank you. And Chris, you mentioned the utility coordination. Can you tell me again, where is that taking place?
We have, we're replacing the
Both
primary
sides.
electric services at Nottingham and Corcoran both.
Okay,
And it's just, there's a series of steps that we have to go through there to identify the work, get a proposal for the work from Grid, and then put a PO issued, which that's easily accomplished. But then it's getting that easement and getting that easement approved. And then by common council, and then it has to be approved in Albany ultimately.
Right.
Before we can engage on that work. And so there's a bit of a tail to that, you know what I mean, to getting that done.
yeah, that's what I wanted to confirm though. So that is a process, a city process that we have some influence over.
You have steps in the process, right? But it initiates with National Grid to be able to get that from them, to get the cost of the work, the estimate for the work, and we understand what we're doing, where we're doing. And then once we have that, we issue the PO, and then we move down the road of filling in the easement paperwork.
But is it the city granting an easement to Grid for the utilities?
Correct.
Is that what it is?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
So, it's a time-consuming process, and we
Yep.
want to just keep focus on that.
Right, so if at the point that it hits City Hall, feel free to follow up with our office to make sure
Will do.
we keep it moving.
Will do. Thank you. So that said, any other questions? If not, I'll jump over here to the slide.
Yeah, go ahead.
So some of these are before and after shots, but just to kind of give you not all of them, but in this case it is a value, kind of a before shot and
I'm sorry, can you just grab that microphone there? You can, nope, right in front of you on the desk. Pull it right off of the stand and speak into it, please. Great.
Okay. This is a classroom at Bellevue, the before and after. You can see the new windows, the new floor, furniture that's in there. Again, at Bellevue, the renovated, the before is on the left and the after is on the right, the renovated gymnasium. Probably the biggest is you see the windows that we cut in, so we got the natural light in there, and then new wall pads, new paint, finishes. Bellevue, again, this is outside of, in the lower level outside of the pre-K. This little kind of pull-out that's in the corridor there for whatever, I'm not sure what they use it for, a reading area or just a pull-out area. Kind of a neat little feature for that space. Your new corridors, the wall tile, the floor tile, just a complete, transformation over there. It looks great. Bellevue, the main office, in all fairness, I think they were still getting sorted out there when we snapped that shot, so I don't want that to be a reflection of, I think that it was a move-in. This is exterior tile that we were working on the outside of the building that got a little bit delayed, but I just got an upfront shot of that that goes around the windows.
That is complete now?
Not complete. We're working through it. So it was a delay in getting some of the materials here. So this is Ed Smith as we transition in. Those are the existing wood floors on the left-hand side that we refinished. It really came out fantastic. I thought it looks great. And then a corridor where we put the new VCT flooring in. That's the new gymnasium at Ed Smith, where we put, this was an addition that we put on, and I think it came out really sharp. And the cafetorium here, we again refinished the existing wood floor that was there. We removed and reinstalled the windows. If you see at the top, the original stained glass was pulled out, completely reconditioned, re-leaded, and then put back into a modern window. It's inside, it's in between the glass of the new window, so that it preserves the stained glass forever, but achieved the same look that you were looking for there. And they're still operable as they were previously. And then a lot of the existing wood that was in there, we refinished as well. The columns, the wainscoting, the paneling that's in there. So really
Beautiful.
Really neat. These are the locker rooms at Ed Smith. Art, these are off of the gymnasium, right? I got the right ones, yep. So again, the colors, the theme carries through from the gym into the locker room. This is Fowler's site. We're somewhere in the middle of driving piles here, and I just wanted to, so we drove these all over, and some of there's been pictures on the report, but they're pretty small, so I just wanted folks to see that. So that's our field after the piles have been driven and cut off, to the tune of like 1,400 of them. And then after that, then we're putting rebar in, a rebar mat, a double mat, and then pouring that. As I said, there's 8 different pours that'll go in there to pour that, and then the timber piles support the mat.
Hey, Chris, with the piles, with the peat moss that was at Fowler, did you have to drive those even further down? Were there some things that we had to do differently to secure all those pilings?
They were driven at different depths, specified to go at different depths in different areas. And so, yeah, they were all driven in, and I think satellite placed, right, through the satellite with the GPS for where they go. So, yeah, but they are varying depths, and then sometimes there were spots where we hit refusal, and then they would test to make sure that had hit. If it stopped short of where it was going to go, then some of those, if they hit if they hit solid ground, So just another picture of the rig that was driving the piles, and then that's our I guess from what I understand, that dirt pile has received more inquiries than
Highly sought after dirt pile, yes.
than anything else on the job. Is what are you doing with all that dirt, and can I have some?
Thinking about going into the dirt business after I'm done with it.
But isn't that soil contaminated?
No, that was the topsoil off the
gotcha.
top of the field.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, yep. No, and on that note, I'm glad you brought that up. We have not had any issues with contaminated soil that had to be removed from the site, and treated it. We were aware of the fact that it was there, and we had it mapped, and we had a monitor on site full time. But knock on wood, we've done very well with that. Good. So again, this is and I know this is not the most glamorous picture, but it's for us engineers that this is the relocation of the CSO line. quite an ordeal in terms of the excavation that had to happen there and putting a 24-inch line in. That line is now in and backfilled and is active and is in use. So that's a picture of one of the, I think, the most recent pours that we did. So that was that 500-yard pour that we had. So the blankets, the orange tarps and stuff that you see there is they heat that the previous night. So we got some ground heaters there and we heat all that so it's ready for the pour in the morning. They peel it off. They started, I think, at 5 a.m. over there to get that pour in. So this is at Grant, just the entrance, the new entrance doors, and then it was a wet day, so the stone is not stained. It's just wet from there. But I just wanted to show a couple of pictures. Grant, the parking lot in the rear of the building. There's another shot of the front and the new stone, the before on the left and the after on the right with the new stone columns and the replacement of the stone facade. That's a picture of the ramp that's in progress at the front of Grant. That's the ramp that traverses down the side to get the ADA access to the front of the building. This is Huntington, pretty significant transformation here between all the masonry restoration, the new windows, the bus loop, the fence, everything that went in there. The picture on the left is the before, obviously. Cafeteria at Huntington. Main office at Huntington, and this is the good picture for today. You wouldn't know it, but that's we put sod in over there and put the new playground in, and that was at the end before the winter set in. Huntington in the basement, where we went down and renovated in the lower level. Over at Blodgett, our before and after on the toilet rooms, which are now all back with the exception of some staff.
One staff toilet room on the 4th floor.
So those are all back in function and use now. The doors at Blodgett, you're obviously the before is on the left, the afters on the right, and that's what I was speaking to before. The doors are in, the clear story above the doors in. We now got to go back in and replace the marble around the door surrounds. That's just an exterior shot of the brick restoration and the new windows. Over at Corcoran, these are both afters, but they're just a picture where we've cut the window in, whereas before none of these had windows, so we're doing that in multiple classrooms in phases. That's the Corcoran cafeteria, kind of a fisheye shot there to show the new flooring and the new lighting that's in there. This is it's a window opening, right? So you were asked what was happening in the evening. It's the demolition required to cut in these openings. Nottingham, just a before and after shot of the toilet rooms there. This is the music or vocal or music, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Instrumental music.
And that's it. So
Looks great.
making progress.
Thank you.
Yep. Well,
Much so.
happy holidays and
Same to
Happy New
you.
Year.
You too, thank you.
Okay. We'll keep moving along, and we have our financial statements up next.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
I am going to go over the October financial statements, and you should have received them in your packet. I'm going to start down on page 5 with the statement of net position, if you are going to follow along with me. Pretty uneventful this month. We just pretty much had payments and some interest that we had come in, but for the most part, not a lot of highlights. So at the end of October, the fund had $107.6 million in Phase 1 and Phase 2 cash. Also included in there is the total capital assets of $223 million. That number has changed from last month. Now that the financials have been audited at 6/30/19, this number reflects the actual number of capital assets at 6/30/19. And that number includes all closed Phase 1 projects, minus the depreciation up to this point, up to 6/30. And also included in that is the payments that were made and have been made for all of Phase 2 projects, which totals about $83 million right now. So that's what comprises that number, okay, for capital assets. So that gives us a total of $30 million in total assets. Compared to the September statement, cash decreased by about $22 million, and that was due to an increase in the interest income, along with which was approximately about $130,000, and vendor payments totaled about $22 million. So that's the reason for the change in cash. The total liabilities at the close of October is $304 million, and that what comprises that is Phase 1 and Phase 2 debt service. That's our bonds payable, along with short-term and long-term, along with the bond anticipation note of $23 million. So at the close of October, the unaudited total net position is $26.4 million. I'm going to move on to page 6. And this is our statement of sources and expenditures. Phase 1, there really was no activity for October. I did report in September the federal subsidy payment that came in of $359,000 and was retransferred to the district. For Phase 2, I did report in September the $695,000 in band proceeds that was reimbursed to us, reimbursed to JSCB from the district. And we did have some additional, as I said, earnings in interest income of $130,000, which increased our total for the current fiscal year to $776,000. Our total capital outlay to this point is $49 million. Yep. And I guess that's it for that page. So now I'm going to move on to the cash flow, which is on the next page. The cash flow statement shows the total actual figures for June through October, and November through June of 2020 are projected. According to the cash flow statement and the way we have things projected, we're looking at about $149.8 million in cash bond proceeds, actually, up at the end of June of 2020. And then the last page is our revenue and inception and expense inception to date report. This one shows Phase 1 projects. The total sources was $142.9 million, and our total expenditures was $141.6. There has been no activity for the month of October in Phase 1, thankfully. And Phase 2, the total for sources is $215.9 million, and the total expenditures for the month is up to October 30th, is $117.7 million. And that concludes my report. Does anybody have any questions?
Okay, thank you. All right, next up, we have our outside auditor report from Bonadeo. Morning.
Good morning. I'm Keely Hines from the Bonadeo Group. I apologize, no fancy colored photos. We're all black and white. That's kind of how we accountants do things. So, in front of you, you have two documents. The stapled document is a required communication for those charged with governance, and then your bound packet is your financial statements as of the year ending 6/30/19. On page 1 is our audit report. We provided an unmodified opinion on 2 opinion units. That is the highest level of assurance that we can provide. That is the report you are looking for. We proposed no audit adjustments to the figures that were provided by the district. That's relevant to you folks because that provides you with the confidence and information that you're getting during those interim periods. When we performed our audit procedures, we found no misstatements in that information. We have no findings to disclose. And just as a reminder, or for anyone that's unfamiliar with navigating the financial statements, pages 10 and 11 are the governmental activities or government-wide financial statements. Those financial statements are presented on the full accrual basis. So you will see that that reflects any long-term debt, so any of your serial bonds that are outstanding, as well as your capital assets. And then your fund financial statements are on what we call a modified accrual basis, and those are on page 12 and 14, and you'll see that those do not reflect long-term assets or liabilities. Rather, long-term assets will be recorded as an expense, as incurred, or an expenditure, and your debt payments will be recorded as expenses. Reconciliations between those two sets of financial statements can be found on page 13 and 15. On page 22, you will see footnote 3 outlines the specifics with your debt-related activity for this year. JSCB issued $65 million in a Series 2019A serial bond. And this was offset by approximately $7 million in principal payments that were made during the year, for a net increase in serial bonds due at year-end of $58 million. JSCB also issued $23 million in bond anticipation notes during the year, and that was compared to the $15 million in fiscal year 18. That can be found on page 23. Capital assets. Footnote 2 can be found on page 21. Your capital projects activity was up about 6 times what it was in the prior year, as you would expect based upon the photos of all the successful completions. CIP increased from about $18.4 million to $83.5 million. So again, in your fund financial statements, that activity is recorded as expenditures, and then as part of coming over to the government-wide, that's capitalized as a capital asset. It sits in CIP until full completion, at which point that's when depreciation will begin. The expenditures were all Phase 2 related: Grant, Huntington, Syracuse STEM, Blodgett, Corcoran, Nottingham, Fowler. And again, your capital outlay expenditures is what's driving your increase in your capital assets to about $223 million. So that's the increase in the construction in progress, offset with about $4 million or so of depreciation expense on Phase 1 related projects. On page 24, footnote 6 relates to subsequent events. As you are all aware, you approved for a borrowing not to exceed $108 million in October. So based on the significance of that, we disclose that for any event that happens through the date of issuance. And then just to speak in general terms for future pronouncements that the GASB has issued, GASB 87 relates to leases. What's going to change in terms of financial statement presentation is an actual leased asset and leased liability popping up on the financial statements. In terms of JSCB, we see no significant impact at this point. There is no leasing. GASB 88 has to do with certain debt disclosures, essentially increasing disclosures for unused lines of credit, assets being pledged, any sort of acceleration clauses, things of that nature. Again, not anticipating any sort of significant impact for JSCB. GASB 89 relates to reporting interest expense. The impact or the change is really having to do with financial statements that are proprietary funds. JSCB is presented as a governmental fund, so again, no impact. And then most recently, GASB 91 was issued, and that's having to do with conduit debt and that's when debt is being issued by a third-party government on behalf of another party when not within the same reporting entity. So regardless of anything that SCSD or the city may do, ultimately JSCB is part of the reporting entity of both those parties. So again, that statement won't be applicable. So we don't see any major changes for JSCB despite all of the activity going on within the GASB. A big thanks to the staff over at SCSD and the help from the city in terms of providing any of the support and backup for expenditures that we do for the testing. Everything ran smoothly. Your stapled packet is what we typically refer to as the report card. It's standard communication. It ultimately, again, discloses no audit adjustments, no issues or concerns with management, no disagreements, and no standards that were adopted as part of the 2019 fiscal year that dramatically changed the statements from last year. Any questions? Okay.
It's a good report.
Yes,
Thank
it
you.
is. It's what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays, and nice job to the financial team at the district and at the city in helping us get there. Okay. Looks like we've got some resolutions here, so Joe, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Yes, thank you. Several resolutions today, starting with resolution number 62, which would be the monthly payment to Landon and Ryan.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
And resolution number 63 would be the monthly payment to the Turner Construction Company.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 64 are the monthly payments for the Tranche 1 contractors.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
And resolution number 65 are the resolutions for the other payments for the Tranche 2 contractors.
So move.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
And finally, resolution number 66 is to authorize approval of the audit representation letter.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
That concludes our resolutions.
Okay. Any further business to come before the board? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned. Happy holidays, everybody. Take care.
Goes upon you for your signature.
Oh, sure.
All right. Catch up downstairs?
Yep.
Some signatures.
Yeah.
You too. Staying in town?